See you next week. Pretty cool about Florida being in the final. Like they really deserve. I'm so happy for Paul Maurice. He's such a good person, a good coach. But who'd have thunk? It's too bad that Carolina. I mean, you imagine if you take Barkov and Tkachuk off of the Florida lineup, what they might be able to accomplish. And Carolina's been missing two of their top forwards, really the whole playoffs almost. So too bad for them. But that's hockey, as they say.
Yeah.
Did you see afterwards they're talking about it, and that if the last game of the season, Chicago had to beat Pittsburgh for Florida to even be in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and they did that.
Yeah, it's a freaking it's a great story. I don't know if you guys saw the stat too on Barkov. It was, I think, might have been in game 2 or maybe in early game 3 that they put it up briefly. I didn't get all of it, but he is first in the playoffs in defensive zone takeaways, defensive zone passes deflected. I forget how they worded all that stuff. In 5 different defensive categories, he was number 1 in the playoffs, basically defending with his stick and takeaways and that sort of thing. Pretty impressive for a really terrific offensive guy, obviously. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Sweet game.
Oh, you're muted, Wally. I just read this morning that Bobrovsky set a record for most saves in the first 3 games of a semifinal game. He broke Johnny Bauer's record from like 1965, I think, or something like that.
Well, he got Carolina outchanced him every game. They probably outplayed them. Bobrovsky was unbelievable.
Yeah, and to think that he didn't even play the first 4 games of the playoffs or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Tim, one of the things that I'm, watching everybody, but the Toronto situation and what's happened to Dubas, and some follow-up interviews, and I'm just going from what I heard in the press and what I heard on the news and sports. Apparently, Dubas said there were things that could have been done that needed to be done, but there's sort of a difficulty in decision making. They couldn't make decisions that might have made a bigger difference. And that's one of the reasons that I'm reading between the lines that he didn't get to keep his job. He wasn't in charge of sort of streamlining the process of decision making relative to the group, what needed to be done. So that's one of the reasons he left. And
Brian.
I've always worried about that. And I'm looking at the Flames and Craig Conroy coming on and his philosophy. And he mentioned one key word, and I believe him, and that word is collaborative. And he talked about first thing you're going to do is have a captain, somebody who can speak to the coach. And when they talked about this, Conroy mentioned nobody felt comfortable talking to the coach. So they never had that conduit of trust and respect, which I think any successful organization has to have. And how you achieve it in the NHL, from the managerial down to the you name it level, that's sort of the art of leadership that goes along with the art of coaching. So
I think part of the, like you're saying, Wally, I think part of the problem in the Toronto situation, I have a friend who is, has some knowledge of all the people involved in the situation, but the guy at the very top, Larry Tannenbaum, who runs Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, he's probably the biggest problem. Like he, sticks his fingers in where he shouldn't stick them in. And that might be what Dubas is alluding to, that maybe even he and Shanahan wanted to do some things and Tannenbaum wanted to do something differently or whatever.
Yep.
You know, who knows what the truth is? But you know, I don't know. It was a self-inflicted wound by Dubas. It sounded, by all accounts, and according to Elliot Friedman too, by all accounts, they were pointed directly in rehiring him, and then it seems like he wanted out, and he may have crafted his exit in a. Anyway, I don't really. I think a lot less of him, Dubas, now than I did before. It'd be interesting to hear. We'll never know, probably, Haley and Danielle and Daryl, what their take on the whole situation would be. But you know, when you have one of your key people saying, "Well, you know, I got to figure out if I really want to be here," why would you want to rehire that person?
Yeah.
So anyway,
when I watched the playoffs, and the camera would go up to Dubas and Shanahan sitting together, and Haley's been sitting beside them at times. But when the heat was on, this is one thing I would ask Haley about. You could see he was emotionally affected by the ups and downs of the game. And I believe that if a coach is reacting emotionally to the situation, he's not really in the future. And I think as a GM, my evaluation of a GM would be, if you're overreacting, you're not really ready to GM, because the coach has to have composure, have the behavior in line, because any kind of overreaction that visibly will be seen by anybody watching television and watching replays, and somehow that reaction to your feelings is, coaches have to be in control of expressing those emotions to stay ahead of the behaviors. But
contrast Dubas with, you know, the shots of Jim Nill during their series, you know, completely sort of stone-faced and just taking it all in, and like you say, staying in the moment and being thoughtful. And
yeah,
it didn't work out for them either. But it was quite a contrast, the shots of Jim Nill versus Dubas in the press box.
no, but it's all about leadership and just trying to make everybody better. And thanks for coming on, guys. I got to head out. Got a doctor's checkup just to see how things are going. And Tom might hang around and chat a bit more, but I've got to head out now. So I'm stopping the
My dog
recording.
just had a major accident, so I gotta clean that up.
Yeah, I got to head out too.
Yeah.
Next-
I'll be-
Okay, guys, thanks
See you
very
next
much
week.
for your time. Take care.